The blind sheikh and 11 of his disciples face multiple counts of conspiracy, including charges for the first World Trade Center bombing, the Landmarks terror plot, and even the 1990 murder of Rabbi Kahane. Which brings a familiar face back into the courtroom. A stunning development in the case will haunt law enforcement for years to come. Documents in the boxes taken from Nasir's home in 1990 after the Meyer Kahane shooting are finally translated from Arabic to English. One prophetic sentence jumps out, never seen until 2 years after the first attack on the World Trade Center, never fully appreciated until 9/11. We will bring down your high buildings.
You can't overstate the importance of the information in those boxes of evidence collected in connection with the Nasir trial. But you want to be looking at that the moment you have it, and that didn't happen.
Another missed opportunity to prevent the rise of terror cells committed to attacking the United States.
But things didn't end there as far as the investigation with rounding up all of the New York Landmark plot conspirators, because aside for Nasir, who will be charged for the World Trade Center and Landmark conspiracies, his cousin El Gabroni will too be implicated while also being incarcerated for assaulting an FBI agent.
One of the suspects in the World Trade Center bombing has now been charged in the terrorist plot to target other areas of New York City. Ibrahim El-Gabroni was indicted today on conspiracy charges in the alleged plan to blow up tunnels and buildings around the city. Earlier, he was charged with obstruction of justice in the World Trade Center bombing. Meanwhile, the alleged ringleader of the massive plot claims he was entrapped and insists there was never any plot at all.
Lie. We never intended, nor did we ever conspire with anybody to carry out such acts. But also, it is important, since we talked.
Ali was interviewed at the federal jail in Lower Manhattan, where he's being held without bail.
Siddiqui Ali's statement of being entrapped would suggest wrongdoing of both the FBI and their agent Imad Salem. But aside this entrapment accusation in the Landmark plot, El Gabroni being also charged automatically raises the press and public to question whether the World Trade Center bombing could have been prevented.
But see if we can untangle this for you in a second. Ever since the World Trade Center bombing, there has been one figure that the government has suspected of being a prime mover in that conspiracy, but the government had never charged him in connection with that case. He'd only been charged with obstructing the investigation and with having false passports. But now that man, Ibrahim El Gabroni, has been charged in connection with this latest conspiracy to blow up the UN building, to blow up the federal building across the street here, and at least one of the Trans-Hudson tunnels. Now, in adding him to this indictment, adding El Gabroni to that indictment, the government says that he first discussed the bombing conspiracy with a government informer back in 1991. Now, the assumption is that that informer being referred to in the indictment is the same informer that they're saying is the key guy who helped the government break this latest conspiracy. But if that's the case, then that would say that that informer has been working for the government for at least 2.5 years. If he has been working for the government that long and been talking to these defendants for that long, question, did he know about the plan for the World Trade Center bombing? If he did know about that plan, why didn't he do something, or why didn't the government do something to stop it? These are among the many questions that are being raised down here in federal court today as a result of this latest information.
2 days later, another individual involved in the Sheikh's inner circle is also arrested, but not as a suspect for the Landmark plot.
Tonight, the feds say they have uncovered another terrorist plot in our area. They say this time the target was Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak. So far, one suspect has been formally charged. Abdo Mohammed Haggag appeared in court today and was ordered held until a detention hearing Tuesday. He is from Egypt and now has permanent resident status in the United States. Haggag lives in the same Jersey City apartment building as Sheikh Omar Abdul Rahman. The building super told us he's had some run-ins with Haggag over building rules.
For some reason, he didn't like me. What he did he have against me, I don't know.
Haggag worshipped at the same Jersey City mosque where Sheikh Rahman frequently preached his brand of Islamic fundamentalism. When we came to take these pictures of the mosque, our photographer didn't exactly get a warm welcome.
Don't shoot.
The FBI claims Haggag conspired to murder Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak during Mubarak's visit to the United States in March. When Mubarak decided not to come to New York, the plan allegedly was delayed until September, when Mubarak will be at the United Nations.
Does this tie in any way with the World Trade Center bomb?
I don't have any knowledge of that from my client. I have no knowledge of that from the government.
Agag's co-conspirators allegedly include two of the alleged leaders of the foil plot to bomb the Lincoln and Holland tunnels and to assassinate Senator Al D'Amato and State Assemblyman Dov Hiken. Agag is not charged in that plot. Meanwhile, in Egypt today, 5 more followers of Sheikh Rahman were hanged for alleged attacks on tourists and an attempted hit on a government official.
And just a week later, the last suspect the authorities had sought for in the Landmark plot case.
A big break tonight in the plot for destruction that targeted New York City. Lawmen have made 2 more arrests. That means all 11 men indicted for the tunnel bombing conspiracy are in custody. They are being held tonight at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Lower Manhattan. The last arrest came in North Wildwood, not far from Cape May, where Tim Minton picks up the story.
Matarawi Mohammed Saleh's life on the run ended abruptly overnight when an FBI SWAT team crashed through the door.
I was informed that there was an 11-year-old child who was unharmed. He picked the child up as he was about to flee, recognizing that there were FBI agents there in SWAT clothes. Just almost moments after he did that, he was stopped and the child was put down and was unharmed.
Saleh and 31-year-old Ashraf Mohammed, who was arrested for allegedly harboring Saleh, were nabbed at this South Jersey beachfront apartment complex. Saleh is the 11th defendant in an indictment that identified him only as Wahid, last name unknown. The other suspects were all previously arrested, many at a Queens warehouse where they were caught allegedly in the act of mixing explosive chemicals. In Camden Federal Court this afternoon, Saleh, who wore a T-shirt and beach sandals, agreed to be returned immediately to New York City. His lawyer complained that the suspect had been bruised during the arrest and had been given nothing to eat for 16 hours. Magistrate Robert Kugler ordered pictures taken of the bruises and ordered both men held without bail. The FBI won't discuss how it knew where to find Saleh, other than to say that agents were looking for him at his last known address in Jersey City, got a lead, headed south, spotted him, and called in the SWAT team.
Martire Mohammed said Saleh is Egyptian but also happens to share the same last name of the Palestinian Mohammed Saleh, who was reported as a member of Hamas and arrested on June 24th with the bulk of conspirators. Martire Saleh's companion Ashraf Mohammed and wife would end up arrested and charged with aiding a fugitive and only serving 2.5 years for helping Martire. But as most of the Landmark conspirators were rounded up the previous month in June, with 5 of the suspects being of Sudanese nationality, one of them being Siddig Ibrahim Siddiqui Ali, as the alleged ringleader, the UN building being one of the prime targets, there was also some revelation and accusation that had also come to light implicating involvement with Sudanese diplomats.
5 of the suspects in the case are Sudanese, and there are also reports linking Sudanese diplomats to this alleged conspiracy. This is causing fear of a backlash among Sudanese Americans.
We hope that the American public opinion will not conclude that the Sudanese are source of terrorism.
Tonight in the Bronx, officers of the Sudanese Society of New York and New Jersey, fearing retribution, condemned any type of terrorism. They would not speak to a possible motive for their 5 arrested countrymen, except to say some Sudanese are frustrated with U.S. policy in the Middle East. Tonight, the FBI is also investigating whether 2 Sudanese diplomats allegedly offered to supply the 5 Sudanese terrorist suspects with diplomatic license plates so they could smuggle a car laden with explosives into the UN garage. Tonight, Sudan's UN ambassador rejects the idea.
I deny it flatly and categorically.
In 1991, Sudan became an Islamic state under the force of a military dictatorship, a country that is in a state of Cold War with neighboring Egypt, and a country that perhaps has more than a coincidental connection to terror right here in New York. Mideast expert Judith Miller believes Sudan's growing emergence as a hotbed of Islamic extremism bears watching.
Sudan, according to testimony on the Hill from a leading State Department official, is more and more suspected of becoming a kind of nest for terrorists, the kind of place that Lebanon was in the 80s and that Iran has been over the years.
But Professor Richard Bullitt of Columbia's Mideast Institute disagrees.
The idea, however, that the Sudan has been exporting a violent form of Islam doesn't appear to have very much demonstration in what's in the public domain.
5 of the 8 arrested as they literally stirred their explosive brew a la Macbeth are Sudanese. The Sudan, a country long reputed to harbor terrorists. But now that country's foreign minister is categorically denying that the Sudanese mission to the UN ever doubled as a spy or terrorist nest.
I would like to clearly that our diplomats has nothing to do with this. The government has nothing to do with this.
And there is a report that 2 Sudanese diplomats plan to provide special license plates and ID cards to the terrorists so they could plant a bomb inside the United Nations building.